said Zach Elliott, and feel free to argue. How you all doing? I'm going to try to re-record this video that I tried to record on Tuesday and did not get through because I went way too long. Like, I can't edit this down long. What I wanted to talk about is the strength of racist programming. And I wanted to kind of talk about it through a couple of examples. The first one was when I was kind of in my late 20s. I was responsible for a program at the convenience store chain that I worked for, Store 24, for putting money order machines in all the stores. I would go in there, I would do the training, I would secure the machine to the counter, I'd put the checks in, the whole business. I was basically responsible for the whole program. And hooked up with an assistant manager at one of the stores that I was doing this in. It was a store in Dorchester, which is a suburb of Boston. It's very heavily African American. Me and this assistant manager, I talked to him on the phone a couple of times, but I'd never really met him in person. And we hit it off. He thought I did a good job with the training and everything, and he invited me back to his apartment to, have a couple of beers. So, I always kind of wanted to do this anyway, so I said sure. So after he got off work, we both walked over to, his house and, had a couple of beers, watched some junk on TV, talked a bit, and then, it was getting kind of late and I needed to, get back. So it's about 11:30. It's winter. It's cold out, and I'm walking back to my car. Get a little turned around, so I end up going out of my way a little bit, taking a little bit longer than it should. I'm going around a corner at one point, and I notice that there are a group of 4 kids, following me. They all got ski masks on. It's Boston and the dead heart of winter, and so I find myself getting really nervous because Dorchester is just not a place where a white person belongs, late at night, and I get it in my head that these kids are following me and they're gonna jump me or something. And then there's like the rational part of my mind that's trying to tell me, you can't be thinking about this, about every group of people who starts following you in Dorchester. That's just wrong. And yet the other part of my mind is clearly stronger. I'm hyperventilating. I can't stop thinking about it. My anxiety level is going through the ceiling. And at some point I get so kind of wrapped up in my own thoughts and worries and concerns that I'm not paying attention to what I do. I trip over a crack in the sidewalk. And all of a sudden these guys are all around me. But not doing what I've been thinking they'd be doing. They're all like, how are you doing? Are you okay? That was quite a fall you took. One of them's got his hand under my armpits helping me back up on my feet. And I just felt like such an asshole in that moment. But I think, upon reflection, I think you just can't help your reactions when they trigger racist programming that you have. And you don't even necessarily have to have strong racist programming. I mean, what you see on the television is good enough. Just watching the news every once in a while. But let me tell you another story. Because this was even a stronger reaction. It's when I went to the wedding of a friend shortly after 9/11. By shortly thereafter, I mean less than a month after. And you know, I didn't have any problems on the way there. There was a funny story from security, but that's for another video. But on the way back, as we were getting onto the plane, I noticed that there were a lot of, you know, tall, Middle Eastern-looking men getting onto the airplane, like 3 of them. And of course, you know, there's a part of me that the rational part that's saying, you know, well, you don't even know that they're Middle Eastern. I mean, they could be Jewish, they could be Italian, they could be, you know, anything. You have no idea, and you shouldn't be assuming, like, you know, everybody from the Middle East is a terrorist anyway. But as I got onto the plane, and my wife and I were seated, and we were way in the back of the plane, I just couldn't shake this fear that those guys were terrorists and that they were going to blow up the plane. And it manifested itself in a very, very odd way, in that I noticed that my right hand, which was on the handrest between my wife and I, that I was gripping that handrest, and I tried to let go of it, and I couldn't. And I kept grasping it tighter and tighter and tighter. And I mean, I could sit there and I could have a conversation with my wife, and it's like, I don't know what's up with my hand. I can't let go of the headrest. And I talked about the fact that I noticed the guys coming on, and I you know, I didn't think they were terrorists, but, you know, there was a part of my mind that apparently was convinced that they were terrorists and was, you know, reacting appropriately. And eventually I even had to get, you know, aspirin, because my hand was in pain from gripping that handrest so hard, you know, for such a long time. And I mean, I wasn't able to relax enough to let go of the handrest until we were, God, we had been in the air for at least 45 minutes by the time. I mean, the flight was nearly half over. But I think the thing that both of those instances have in common is that I thought it was really interesting how my physical reactions to the situation were totally outside of my control. I mean, I could not control the anxiety reaction that I was having in either instance. And even if there was a part of my mind, and in both cases it was true, there was a part of my mind that was kind of rationally picking apart my emotional, physical reaction, that it didn't give me any control over it, which I thought was, you know, in retrospect, the most interesting thing about it. And that we have these strong physical, emotional reactions, which I think are engendered in us because of well, among other things, the divisive nature of our news coverage, and also, you know, the editorial aspects, both of, like, you know, the news and newspapers, etc. And I think that it makes these tendencies stronger. And I think when we think about things like race in America, we need to remember that these things are extra rational. And they're more powerful in a lot of cases than reason. I mean, I keep thinking about, in both those situations, if I didn't have this kind of strong anti-racist convictions that I do, it would have been very easy to kind of fall into blaming, you know, the black kids in Dorchester or the Middle Eastern, if they were even that, people on the plane, for my anxiety. Because, I mean, clearly, whether they intended to or not, they were causing it. And that whole notion of intention, whether or not they're intending to do that, I think is a moot point with a lot of people. I mean, they have that reaction and they just give in to it. And I think it's something that's very hard to fight against. You know, not to toot my own horn, but I mean, I think you need to have strong convictions to win out over that kind of emotional, psychological, physiological reaction. So if people have you know, similar situations that they were into, I mean, I'd love for them to either talk about it or make a response video to this one. This is Zach Elliott, and you can always feel free to argue.